First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Mashiach, double honors to the apostles, elders, and Akim of Great Millstone, and Shalom to you sincere Akim that are teaching this truth and sincerity. This is an article by Vox. It reads, the controversial 1994 crime law that Joe Biden helped write, explain. It reads, Biden has taken credit for the 1994 crime law, but critics say the law contributed to mass incarceration of Israelites. It goes on to say, one of the most controversial criminal justice issues in the 2020 election may be a tough on crime law passed 26 years ago and authored by Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. It goes on to say, if you ask some criminal justice reform activists, the 1994 crime law passed by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton, which was meant to reverse decades of rising crime, was one of the key contributors to mass incarceration in the 1990s. It reads, they say it led to more prison sentences, more prison cells, and more aggressive policing, especially hurting Israelites who are disappointingly likely to be incarcerated, to where, the whole origin of Esau having this hatred towards our people and having this fixation of trying to lock up as many Jakes as he can, it all goes back to the birthright. And I have the scripture right here. This is Genesis chapter 27, verse 41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. And that perpetual hatred that these so-called white people have is still in them to this day. It never went away. And it goes on to say, if you ask Biden, that's not true at all. The law, he argued, on the campaign trail had little impact on incarceration. That's a lie. That's what the devil does, is he deceives, and that's what devil means, deceiver. It says, if you ask Biden, that's not true at all. The law, he argued, on the campaign trail had little impact on incarceration, which largely happens at the state level. As recently as 2006, Biden defended the law, arguing it restored American cities. To where, what cities is he talking about? Predominantly Edomite, areas, to where there's millions upon millions of Jakes incarcerated for, the exact same type of crimes, whether it's been, stealing some, food or, having a couple ounces of weed or something like that. The exact same crime, which you're not, supposed to do, to where, that's to where that exact same type of crime that an Edomite will do, an Edomite will get a slap on the wrist. But if a Jake steals a candy bar, he'll get locked up for life. And there's been many instances of Jakes, many instances of Jakes being falsely accused of crimes that they didn't commit. And there's millions upon millions of Jakes inside prison right now for crimes that they didn't commit, whether they had, drugs planted on them, forced to admit to a crime that they didn't do because, Esau just trying to, just throw as many, Jake bodies inside these prison cells. It reads, Biden defended the law arguing it restored American cities following an era of high crime and violence, when Esau's the biggest crime lord, the original gangster of the planet. It reads, the truth, it turns out, is somewhere in the middle. The 1994 crime bill, the 1994 crime law was certainly meant to increase incarceration in an attempt to crack down on crime, but its implementation doesn't appear to have done much in that area because it was never to stop crime, because Esau's the one that commits these crimes at an all-time high. He's the one that's putting the drugs and the guns in the ghetto. He's the one that allows certain types of music that advocate violence of Jakes having an evil eye towards another Jakes. To where that influences and that ramps up, instances of violence breaking out in Jake neighborhoods. To where Esau is the one that put the drugs, the crack, the meth inside these neighborhoods. To where they say, well, why'd you pick it up? Well, when you put a person in a corner, and first and foremost, when someone doesn't know their nationality or who they are, and they're lost, they're going to gravitate towards darkness, to where the truth is here now. The apostles, the elders, the prophets are here. There's brothers out there all throughout the highways and byways teaching the truth in sincerity, bringing out the real good news. It goes on to say, the 1994 crime law was certainly meant to increase incarceration in an attempt to crack down on crime, but its implementation doesn't appear to have done much in that area. And while the law had many provisions that are now considered highly controversial, some portions, including the Violence Against Women Act and the assault weapons ban, are fairly popular among Democrats. It says that's how politicians like Biden, as well as previous Democratic rivals like Senator Bernie Sanders, can now justify their votes for the law by pointing to the provisions that weren't tough on crime. But with Biden's criminal justice record coming under scrutiny as he runs for president, this is an older article, but it's still relevant. It's the mass incarceration provisions that are drawing particular attention as a key example of how Biden helped fuel the exact same policies that criminal justice reformers are trying to reverse. To where, that just goes to show you the pride of Esau and the deception that they do, to where he will not admit that he is one of the many, Edomite devil, presidents that had a hand in locking up, millions of Jakes on, small instances of just, the exact same crime an Edomite will do. They'll get a slap on the wrist, like I said, and what if a Jake did it? He'll get life in prison. So it goes on to say, it's the mass incarceration provisions that are drawing particular attention as a key example of how Biden helped fuel the exact same policies that criminal justice reformers are trying to reverse. And while Biden has released sweeping criminal justice reform plans that aim to, in some sense, undo the damage of policies he previously championed, Biden's history has led to skepticism among some progressives and reformers. It goes on to say, now with Tuesday presidential debate looming, the 1994 law may be another way for, President Donald Trump to attack Biden as Trump tries to spit his own punitive criminal justice record positively. It says the 1994 crime law had a lot in it. The Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, now known as the 1994 crime law, was the result of years of work by Biden, who oversaw the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time, and other Democrats. It was an attempt to address a big issue in America at the time. Crime, particularly violent crime, had been rising for decades. They act like as if, Jake was, the one causing all the crime. It's like, wait a minute, how'd you gain this land? First of all, how'd you gain this world? How'd you, conquer all these nations? Because you're the real criminal, Esau. You want to point the finger at everybody else, you better look in the mirror. It says, crime, particularly violent crime, have been rising for decades, starting in the 1960s, but continuing on and off through the 1990s, in part due to the crack cocaine epidemic, which, Ronald Reagan had had a huge role in that, to where Lord willing I could do a video on that as well. It says, politically, the legislation was also a chance for Democrats, including the recently elected President Bill Clinton, to wrestle the issues of crime away from Republicans. Just a quick point, during that time, while, Biden was trying to get the 1995 crime bill passed, around that time, Hillary Clinton did did some type of speech on television, and she was talking about young Jake teenagers. And there's a video of it. She said, these she basically said on the lines of, these young teens are super predators. They have no morals. They have no control. Basically, she was just demonizing young Jakes instead of identifying why young Jakes were acting out, from fatherless households and stuff like that. She just wanted to demonize, but really she slipped up, when she said, super predators. Because, hey, like the Predator movies, hey, from those that are the elect, they're going to be turned into those hunters, those predators, like the old school Predator movies. It reads, politically, the legislation was also a chance for Democrats, including the recently elected President Bill Clinton, to wrestle the issue of crime away from Republicans. Polling suggested Americans were basically, don't believe anything that comes out of these politicians, these government officials, so on and so forth's mouths of saying, oh, they're going to help fix the community. They're going to do something. They're just using Jake for a prop in order to, have that support and have that limelight as if they're a good person. They're not. Esau, these devils will always be the villain of this story. There's no such thing as a good Edomite. Polling suggested Americans were very concerned about high crime back then, and especially after George H.W. Bush defeated Michael Dukakis in the 1988 presidential election, in part by painting Dukakis as soft on crime. Democrats were acutely worried that Republicans were beating them. See, that's all they care about. All they care about is their status. They really don't care. Hey, like that Michael Jackson song, hey, all I really know is they don't really care about us, and that's true. They'll act like they care. They'll do all these, tours. They'll do the events. They'll go to the, the Harlot House where, the predominantly, Jake and Eve is at, just to put on that show. But behind it all, they got their I forgot the old say. They got their fingers twisted, like they're holding it behind their back, and with that knife behind their back, pretending like they're your friend, but really they're your enemy. It reads, Democrats were acutely worried that Republicans were beating them on the issue. So both sides are, full of crap. It says, Biden revealed in the Politics in 1994 law bragging after it passed that the liberal wing of the Democratic Party was now for 60 new death penalties, 70 enhanced penalties, 100,000 cops, and 125,000 new state prison cells. And another thing, these private prisons, to where the government adds, it helps out these independent private prisons that Edomite, as long as he got some money, he's able to put together and have a facility built to imprison people, to where that's why these police stations, these cops have a quota that they have to meet. So if they don't meet that quota, they're not going to get paid like they want to. They're not going to get that vacation time like they want to. So they'll go out of their way to find the littlest thing, basically trying to instigate, a situation, harassing, Jake's, and just try to, get the Jake to act out, to where that's why it's so important. If you ever get pulled up by a cop, stay in the spirit. If the cop asks you to roll your window down, just roll your roller down. Stay in the spirit. Have faith in Yahweh Sheba Shah. You might, because, the flesh is weak, to where, of course you're going to feel a little something, but no matter what, always have faith in Yahweh Shema Shai in any situation. Don't be like, these Jakes or these people you be seeing on YouTube where they want to crack their window and give the cop a hard time, to where really you're just making the situation even worse. You got to have discernment. You got to have an analytical mind to say, you know what? Understand the spirit. I pray to Yahweh Sheba Shai that I be delivered from this situation. It goes on to say, it says the law imposed tougher prison sentences at the federal level, encouraged states to do the same. It provided funds for states to build more prisons. Aimed to fund 100,000 more cops, and backed grant programs that encourage police officers to carry out more drug-related arrests and escalation on the war on drugs. It says at the same time, the law included several measures that would be far less controversial among Democrats today. The Violence Against Women Act provided more resources to crack down on domestic violence and rape. A provision helped fund background checks for guns. The law encouraged states to The law encouraged states to back drug courts, which attempted to divert drug offenders from prisons into treatment, and also helped fund some addictive treatment. All of this was an old school attempt to attract votes from lawmakers who otherwise might be skeptical, and it succeeded at winning over some Democrats. Bernie Sanders, for one, criticized an earlier version of the bill written in 1991 but never passed. for supporting mass incarceration, quipping, "What do we have to do? Put half of the country behind bars," which that's exactly what Esau has done and is still doing to this day. There's millions upon millions of Jakes inside prisons that for crimes that they didn't commit, and and this all part of it is Esau. He that hatred, that perpetual hatred that he's had from the get go. It reads. It says, "What do we have to do? Put half of the country behind bars?" But he voted for the 1994 law, explaining at the time, "I have a number of serious problems with the crime bill, but one part of it that I vigorously support is the Violence Against Women Act." It says Biden also opposed some parts of the law, even while he helped write it. In 1994, he reportedly called a 3 strikes provision that escalated prison sentences up to life for some repeat offenses. It says Wacko, an illustrator of Congress' tough on crime attitude, but Biden and other Democrats, authors of the law, were clear about their intention, supporting a more punitive criminal justice system to rebuke criticism that they were soft on crime. See, that's all they care about is their image. They don't care about the lives that they're ruining, the lives that they're taking away. All they care about is, well, how many votes could I get? Even though your vote don't mean crap. That's nothing but a game, a delusion, thinking that you have a choice on who gets to decide who the president is. You don't. The presidents, they're all puppets. They're chosen at a very young age. Say, hey, it's a certain part of your life. They groom in and they do all that. That you're gonna be the president of the United States. So on and so forth. It goes on to say. It says, but Biden and other Democrats, authors of the law, were clear about their intention, supporting a more punitive criminal justice system to rebuke criticism that they were soft on crime. The legislation wasn't enough for some Republicans in Congress who complained the bill included too much social spending and pledged to pass tougher laws as part of their 1994 campaign to take back the House. On their website for his 2008 presidential campaign, Biden referred to the 1994 crime law as the Biden crime law because they all, Esau always wants to put his name on something, and bragged that it encouraged states to effectively increase their prison sentences by paying them to build more prisons. So that goes to show you, this, the president of the United States, all presidents, they're all evil. They're all a bunch of demons. They have a hatred towards you, and they're doing the bidding of their masters, which is the elites. It says, asked about Biden's support for the law, the Biden campaign pointed to previous provisions like the Violence Against Women Act. See, that's what they'll do. They'll try to say, well, look over there. Don't look at what I did. Look what we passed. It's like, okay, you could have did that separately, or so on and so forth, but you had to put it all together, and your main focus on was to lock up as many Jakes as possible, keep building a whole bunch of prisons so you could fill up them beds, and you could benefit off of people suffering and being in prison for the exact same crime that an Edomite will do. Edomite get a slap on the wrist, and a Jake, he gets life in prison for the exact same type of, instance of whatever took place. It reads, the 10-year assault weapons ban, firearm background check, funding, money for police, support for addictive treatment, and a safety valve that let a limited number of low-level first-time drug offenders avoid mandatory minimum sentences. They also cited some of his past criticism for punitive sentences, including the 3 strikes measure, and pointed out that Republican-controlled Congress later cut funding drastically. Drug squad. Both sides are... What it all comes down to, this place, this world, this kingdom, this society is detrimental to the 12 tribes, so-called blacks, so-called Latinos, the so-called Native Americans. This place is not for us. The reason why we were here in the first place is because we went against Yahweh by Shebao Shai. We broke the laws of Yahweh by Shebao Shai to where we were punished for it, to where we're in prison right now. Yeah, you could drive your car, you could have a home and stuff like that. You could go here and go there, but you're still in prison. It doesn't matter. You need permission to do each and every single thing. You need permission to fly. You need permission to fish. You got to pay for water. Water should be free. You got to have to continue to, to send your kids to these indoctrination camps, which is these so-called schools that, basically put the picture of how, our history is like the way they teach about our history in these schools is that, oh, your history is slavery and Martin Luther King. That's it. But our history is right in the scriptures. It's all there, all the way from Genesis all the way to Revelations. The Bible, the scriptures. That's about our people. That's about so-called blacks, so-called Latinos, and so-called Native Americans. That's our history. That's the book of life. That's the true, guide to how to live your life, and that's the true history book of how to know who you truly are. You're an Israelite. Yasharallah. It goes on to say in a 2016 interview with CNBC, Biden said that there were parts of the law he changed. Right. But argued that by and large, what it really did, it restored American cities, Edomite cities. Although crime has dropped since the 90s, the research suggests punitive criminal justice policies played at best a small partial role in that decrease. Biden also took credit for the law as a matter of fact, I drafted the bill, if you remember. Salakia for that. So with this scripture, this is Isaiah chapter 14, verse 2. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, who captives they were. We've been captives under these heathens, and the main one being Esau, to where he hasn't let us go to this day. We're still in captivity to this day, to where don't fool yourself thinking that just because you're able to go certain places, you're still a slave. You're still being held against your will. We're still POWs. We're still in the land of our captivity, whether it be here or anywhere else, to where you're not free, you're not sovereign. And the only way to truly be sovereign is when Yahweh Shai returns and takes back what is his, which is this earth and his elect. It says, this is Isaiah chapter 14, verse 2, and the Lord shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. So you best get ready, Esau, because your time is at an end, to where this place is circling down the drain. No matter what you do, no matter how many no matter how many channels of brothers you want to take down, you're just showing more and more that this is the truth. To where all you're doing is just telling yourself, so, hey, do you. You Edomites out there, hey, max out them credits cards, live it up, because, hey, this is it. This is it, baby. So you best get ready. And I pray that this video was edifying. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Mashiach. Double honors to my apostles, elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to you sincere Akim that are teaching this truth in sincerity. Shalom.